There's a subset of online competitive Pokemon players who hold the view that switching is unfair, bad, or cowardly, or something along these lines. This video is not blaming anyone who subscribes to this view. It's to explain why switching is not only not bad, but why it's great, and why it makes competitive Pokemon the beautiful, interesting game that it is. Before we go any further, here's a simplified but essentially accurate example of what a typical battle where neither player switches would be like. Tyranitar vs Zapdos. Tyranitar beats Zapdos one-on-one. Lucario comes in. Tyranitar stays in and gets obliterated. Gliscor comes in. Lucario stays in and gets knocked out. Suicune comes in. Gliscor stays in and gets knocked out. And so on and so forth. This doesn't make for a very skillful or even interesting battle. It's really straightforward, and not in a good way. The moves are so obvious as they can get if the game is reduced to a series of isolated one-on-one matchups. It almost defeats the point of having 6 Pokemon on the team. There's only so much moveset tweaking you can do to compensate for the fact that your Pokemon is going to match up against a Pokemon it loses to more often than not, and will thus be knocked out. The player who gets the first knockout is going to be at an incredible advantage. This is taking opportunities for skillful play out of the player's hands and leaving battles more down to a combination of team matchup and lead selection for team preview generations. There is very little skill or opportunity in turning the game into trying to beat the opposing Pokemon with whatever you have out at the time. It removes almost all the nuances having different Pokemon pair with each other. Incidentally, this mindset is also why some people think Pokemon with quadruple weaknesses are bad, because they are less capable of taking super effective hits and retaliating in the disadvantaged 1v1s they have after they get a knockout. Even putting aside the fundamentally misplaced idea of not switching to begin with, not having a quadruple weakness doesn't help against plenty of super effective attacks, or even against neutral attacks. Consider the examples of Latios' Draco Meteor. It hits nothing for 4 times effective damage, and hits most Pokemon for neutral damage, yet it is one of the most iconic, unstoppable knockout buttons of all time. Unless you have a fairy type. I really can't stress this enough. Switching is the lifeblood of competitive Pokemon. That's what makes it skillful. It's what makes playing against other humans more interesting than blasting through the Elite Four. Even Red in Pokemon Crystal will keep his Pikachu in against ground types it has no hope of beating. Switching to keep your Pokemon alive, switching to get your powerful Pokemon in for an opportunity for a big hit, making a number of different moves when you predict your opponent doing switches themselves, that is where much of the beauty of competitive Pokemon takes place. It is also why some players struggle to conceptualize Pokemon being broken. For example, how can Genesect be broken if it's quadruple weak to fire? Besides the fact that every Pokemon has significant weaknesses, there's also the fact that some Pokemon have too much of a negative impact on games if their user doesn't just leave them in to get knocked out. It's part and parcel of what constitutes regular competitive play. Most Pokemon that aren't just left in to get destroyed won't come back and ruin your life later in the battle. The few that do are the problematic ones. Some players even write off the best Pokemon around because when they use them, they don't switch, instead leaving them in against such moves. How can Heatran, Landorus Therian, Kartana, and Weavile be good when they have quadruple weaknesses? Again, refer to the aforementioned section of the video regarding regular weaknesses or neutrality. You may as well say most Pokemon are bad because they get knocked out by Draco Meteor. But obviously that's not the case. But wait, you might wonder, how am I supposed to win if my opponent switches to a Pokemon that counters mine? Well, that's where the prediction factor comes in. Instead of just aiming to beat down whatever's in front of you like you would against the Elite Four, the game takes on a more challenging, multi-dimensional aspect. Basically, you have options. You don't have to go for the straightforward move each time. You can mix up your play. Your opponent will not be able to withstand your Pokemon forever. Think of it like in-game. Yeah, something like Whitney's Miltank takes hits incredibly well, but it can't take them non-stop. And in competitive, there's no potions or full restores to ruin your fun at the last second. Even the Pokemon that use recovery moves can't do this infinitely. That is, if they can even withstand the offensive assault you're throwing at them in the first place. Think of breaking through your opponent's defenses as a more team-focused, systematic version of beating Whitney's Miltank. This is where combinations and strategy come in. It's why players use tactics like Stealth Rock, U-Turn, Pursuit, Status Conditions, and much more. These less immediate sources of damage can make your offensive Pokemon impossible to switch into, even if the opponent knows they're coming. Chances are, if you're losing because your opponent is switching to counters every time, you're not playing well and/or the team doesn't have the tools to break through. Basically, it's not a good team, but that's fine. It's part of the learning process. So get out there and embrace this new method of playing competitive Pokemon, which makes the game effectively endless with possibilities. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like, subscribe, as well as I'm uploading Pokemon Scarlet and Violet content every single day, multiple times a day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Good luck.